Welcome to another episode of Lifelong Learner. This is the Out of Class edition with Ben, Janesh, and Matt. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to a different episode of Lifelong Learner and a new segment called Out of Class. Today, we are joined by two absolute legends, Dr. Ben Cavasso. I forgot the DR then.
Yeah.
And Matt Ind. Welcome, fellas.
Mate, great to be hanging out with you guys. This is going to be an absolute blast today and every time we do this, I reckon.
Always a pleasure, Janesh, and awesome to have Dr. Ben Cavasso on the regular. Very excited.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So out of class, we were talking, Ben's been gallivanting across Australia in and out of escaping lockdowns. And so this idea started before Melbourne lockdown 4, if you can remember that long. And it was like, let's get together and chat, right? And chat about different things, what's going on in our worlds. And here we are. This is the out of class, meaning that we're out of the classroom, a little less formality. We say what we want to say and what we say anyway on the show, but a little bit giving you our take on things.
Kind of the water cooler, it's the water cooler conversation. It's the one you have sort of when you're on your break, like when you come out of the classroom, when you come out of the lecture theatre and you go to the cafeteria and you chat about what's really going on, because you can't talk in the lecture. You got to follow the rules. You take notes. It's a little bit more formal. This is the uncensored, uncut kind of version of what's going on. That sometimes may be politically incorrect, dare I say, version of what's going on in our heads.
Yeah, what we really want to say, but you can't when you're in a classroom in front of people that, may judge what you're about to say. So you're telling me there's no judgment here, lads? I can get away with anything.
Well, mate, there's definitely no judgment from us. The challenge, of course, will be that people have lots of charges out there in the world, and ego is strong in many, as Obi-Wan, or was it who was the other dude, the little character? Who was that little character? Yoda, as Yoda would say. The force is strong in this one, but the ego is strong in this one. So many people, have this big ego, and it needs to be defended. And they will defend it by going on the attack, or by sometimes retreating and moving away and pretending they don't want to see it. So there will be some that will obviously judge what we say, which is, that's okay.
So, fellas, what's been happening in your worlds this week? This week we're mid-September. The season's changing, except for magpies swooping, and the day's great. I'm looking outside and it's Bluebird Day. It's nice seeing that after what seems like a long winter. But what's been happening, fellas?
Go, Matty.
No, Matt, I was gonna wait for you to jump in, mate. I've been making a lot of time for activities outside. The weather has turned a little bit. There's been a little less rain lately, so getting outside into the body has been so awesome. And sort of prioritizing some things, working a little bit less and playing a little bit more has been an absolute saving grace for me. So as far as positive things that are giving back, that's just been incredible. So worthy. But what's really interesting, Benny was talking about ego and in others, noticing the ego in myself, that so often the idea of, going for a skate or getting something done that could produce an income, I find myself torn, or I feel guilty when I do that thing. So there's often quite a bit of resistance at times to go for a walk in nature or something like that. But that would be the positive charge for me, the realization that these things that give back are so important.
I was listening to someone talk a little bit about our habits and just our way of operating. And he was saying, don't change the way that you operate. Just put a system and a structure in place that sets you up for success. Don't try and change all of who you are. Just throw some systems in place that support you to do some of the things that may sometimes be difficult. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, for example, with you, you love getting out in nature, but there's this other part of you that's torn to kind of build the business. Well, just put some systems or structures in place that let you do both. That'll let you get out in nature and then let you work on the business, rather than trying to change who we are to be the Tony Robbins or the Brendan Burchards or the Gary Vaynerchuks or, these people that are hungry and driven and focus on work and business and growth all the time. Put a system and structure in place that lets you be a little bit of that when it's required and a bit of the other person when required. So I thought that was interesting, Matty. And I think it's a struggle for all of us.
Yeah, definitely finding that balance between the doing and the being for me. And I know that's a big part of me. I think you've got to know yourself before you can work out the systems and what's going to be appropriate for you. And just coming to terms with there is this other part of me that that isn't as driven and as hungry. It's more meaningful, less ambitious, but it comes from doing very little. And then there's conflict there because, we've been brought up, a little bit, you are what you do, you are what you produce. So that's been a little bit of a battle, but also, really rewarding. And
it's cool, mate.
Just to bridge on what Benny was saying, I was listening to a podcast this week on Lewis Howe's School of Greatness, and there's this. I'll flick it. I'll put it in the show notes, but it's about this guy that's he talks about manifestation and all that. But this guy's life is so systemized. Like he's got like a standard operating procedure for his world, his family, his like agenda, his family meetings. He's got a chief of staff for his family, right? But he goes, I do this so I have so much space. He goes, so I don't have to think about things. He goes, he's got like a department head for each of his lives. Like he just employs them, and just fascinating that. But he does that, Matt, to give him space. He goes, I'm so systemized that he goes, I don't even need to think about what clothes I'm going to wear today because I already know. And my person that I put in charge have already got that out and ready for me. And they know when there's a leak in the house, they'll turn to this page in the book and they'll call this plumber for this type of leak. I don't even need to think about it, which is fascinating. He goes, time's the number one thing. And he goes, I want to be able to do what I want to do and be creative and be at my best. So he goes, all these things, he goes, I just put a system in place. And he goes, and if I can't put a system in place, he goes, then I don't need it, right? He goes, I don't need it. And he goes, I don't want to do much, right? So that's why that's how he gets away with being in conflict of going, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? He's like, goes, nope, it's all good. It's all systemized. And which is really interesting. He said, since he started putting in a chief of staff of his like personal world, he goes, he's all other areas of his life has kind of just increased, which is fascinating, right? Having a chief of staff for your personal world, right?
It sounds very cool.
Yeah, I saw you light up, Ben. I saw you.
Sounds like he has a very large disposable income if he's paying someone to run every facet of his life, a chief of staff for everything.
It sounds like a big title for what could be a very simple role, though. Do you know? Like our days don't necessarily have to be very complicated. Once you put a system in place, it's just a matter of someone kind of maintaining that the system remains intact. It kind of reminds me of Jocko Willink. He talks about within discipline, you've got freedom. The more disciplined, the more free you are. And we kind of think about those and we often push against discipline. We push against structure. But within the discipline, there is the freedom. And we often talk about our team in my chiropractic practice. We have so many scripts that we use within the team. So I remember Disney, used to do a lot of work around scripting, and so as do many theme parks and many organisations that want to produce a reproducible experience for their guests. Don't let the person that's kind of the host of the day go by gut feel, go by how they're feeling for the day. Give them a script. So whether they're having a bad day or a good day, they still follow the script. They still say the same thing. They still give people the same experience. Because within scripts, they give you freedom. You'd think a script restricts you from what you say. But in our practice, for example, when we greet the phone, it is Mornington Peninsula Chiropractic Centre. This is Ben. This is Lucy. This is, it's the same script. Everyone says exactly the same thing. So it's reproducible and it allows you to bring the authentic you. You say the same words, but you come through. And so I think in systems, in scripts, in the discipline, it does really free us to be ourselves. It allows us to come out of our head and be authentic. I think the other thing about systems, and we spoke about this last week, I think, lads, around entropy. Everything in any closed system will always move to more disorder rather than order. And so if we don't have structure and if we don't have systems, if we don't have a schedule book, if we don't have our diary organized, our day moves to disorder, not order. Yep.
So you're saying if you had a schedule and a system, if your garden and your pool were being tip-top, you wouldn't have come back to disorder bit? When
I wouldn't have come back to disorder.
Gardens going everywhere, algae and stuff in your pool. Is that where you're going?
Well, mate, I look at you guys have obviously you've had a trim up because you guys are now, I think, out of Matty. I don't know whether you ever have a trim up, but Janesh, you're looking sharp today. But we're seeing people, particularly in the media, right, in Victoria, in Metro, they're not getting a haircut. They haven't had a haircut for 8-9 weeks. Now their hair doesn't move to more order; it moves to more disorder. And then we trim it.
There's a point, Benny. There's a point where it goes through disorder back into order, I would say. Just a different type of order.
We're at that precipice of it going from disorder to order.
To me, with the hair analogy, that's around about the year. It's very awkward and just massive afro, but then it does grow to a length where it comes back into order. Not everyone's taste, but
actually, there is also that. Also, with say facial hair, if you haven't shaved, so say after say a day or more or so, it will be like my growth will be disorder. Like if you can get through that disorder of that little annoying itchy, then you're good. But then, or you go back to clean shaven. There's that little bit of time of going, oh, nah, doesn't look good, doesn't feel good. Either go back the other way or wait it out.
Which is kind of interesting because this ties into something that I've been looking into quite a bit, which is flow. This idea of actionless action, or getting everything done by doing nothing. There's this sort of Eastern philosophy of yin and yang, of balance, of the doing and the not doing, of the order and the not order, which does tie into what you were saying, Benny, around discipline, creating freedom. Often it's paradoxical. It's more structure to create a space for less. But I'm finding this very interesting, this concept. The Western, we have this way of doing things, and the East have this very different way of doing things. Just starting to dive into some of that other stuff that's less familiar, that's less structured, that doesn't feel as comfortable, but can be rewarding. What do you guys think when you think about some of those philosophies that are less structure based?
Yeah, well, I wonder, with and it could just be, again, you can find anything you want that will suit you, kind of your point of view. But if I look at Eastern philosophy, I would say they are incredibly structured. Do you think about when you're meditating, if you're doing a meditation, you bring meditation is structure. It's not, don't let your brain go to entropy. Don't let your thoughts go to entropy. It's have your thoughts come focused, bring them into a laser focused state. That is, focus on a mantra, focus on your breathing, focus on a single point. There's a real discipline to meditation. I did a meditation last night, and I was sort of tired at the end of the day, and I I wasn't in a great position, and I didn't set myself up well for success for the meditation. And in about 10 minutes in, I'd fallen asleep. Now, that is not the point of a meditation. And I came out, and Michelle said, geez, you were gone for a bit. And I said, I fell asleep for 30 minutes of the 40 minutes that I was in there. And she goes, that must have been, that's good. I go, no, that is not the point of meditation. Meditation is to bring a real discipline to your mind, a real structure to your mind, not to just go random and drop off to sleep and think about stuff and what's going on. So, but I get that, where do we do the other? Where do we find flow in just letting go? But I would say Eastern philosophies are really disciplined.
Again, I think I agree with you. Discipline is the way to freedom. There is discipline in one area, like for meditation, for example, you're focused on one thing, you're sitting still in one spot, but you're not doing multitasking. You don't have 35 other systems in place that you're diving into. You are focused on one thing. And often these very enlightened beings are doing one thing at a time. They're not running a book with 55 different things. They don't have their finger in every pie, so to speak. They're one thing at a time, very simple, simplistic, minimizing generally, not optimizing, minimizing. And then the opposite of that is by minimizing, they optimize. There's constantly this paradox, which is challenging for the brain to comprehend, but also at times really rewarding when you feel like you're getting it and then you're not.
Yeah. That just really reminds me of, and it is, you think about many of the Asian cultures, there's a real simplicity. There is a minimalism to it. There's a real zenness to so much of it. And I picked up this, I happened to notice this bracelet hanging on Michelle's thing, which I'd given Michelle some time ago. And I had stamped on it, simplify for more. Simplify for more. And it came at a point in our lives, it must be 7-8 years ago, there was a little bit of a crisis, and we decided that we would simplify our lives, would really simplify them right down, and we kind of started to see the beauty in simple, that maybe less can be more. And so I had that bracelet and I gave it to her, and what the confusing thing that happened for me at that point was I also said to myself, I confused simplify for more at some point with play small. I thought simplify for more also meant play the game of life small. And so my world started to constrict and get smaller. My world got smaller, not simpler, but smaller. And so I think that's finding again that balance that we're all trying to seek is how do we do simple? How do we simplify but not play small? How do we not play small as a parent, as a lover? How do we not play small in our businesses? How do we simplify them but not play small? So for me, that was just a moment of confusion. I remember I was at a conference with some really big players, and it just dawned on me that I'd stopped simplifying for more and I'd started playing small. And I came out of that conference, and it was probably 6-7 years ago, and went, stop playing small, simplify, but stop playing small.
Yeah. I think at times, like especially in today's society, we overcomplicate things for the sake of overcomplicating things. Where if you look busy, it's a good thing, right? I think we talked about this one other time, like busy is like this badge of sexiness, and it's but you don't need to be, right? Like you can still have if more output, if not the same, by being less busy, by being simple. It's like when you said that, simple but playing big, Ben, reminds me of like a child. A child will really keep it simple, but they're still going to the moon. They're not going, I'm just walking to the park, Dad. But they're playing big. They're going to the moon. There's no way you convincing them that they're not going to the moon. But they're simplifying because, like, I'm just going to build this rocket ship out of cardboard and it's going to go. And it's so simple. There's this sunglass company in Sydney. Their frames are all from like plastic bottles, right? And their company mantra is called Do Good. The name escapes me. I think it's Gooder glasses. GOODR. And so the main owners, business partners, are his two sons. And their business plan, and he still has it, is on a one page with crayons, right? Which is just fascinating. And when they went and got like investment and stuff like that, they're like, "Where's your business plan?" He goes, "Here it is. It's a one pager with crayons." And they've been in like all over the world, right? And been in window displays. So they're playing big, but super simple.
On that, why do you think we insist on making things way more complicated than they actually need to be? Like, when there's a problem, we manage to make that problem way worse. We sell that problem as being the most challenging thing in the world. Like, it just seems to be a common thing that we do. And maybe it is tied to what you were saying. Culturally, we're brought up to work hard and things should be challenging and we should be grafting and grinding. But why do you guys think that? I mean, you see it with little kids when there's a little problem, sometimes they make the problem massive. Is it so that when we conquer the problem, we feel more important because we managed to conquer something challenging? What do you guys think? Why do we seem to, as human beings, make things more challenging than they need to be, more complicated?
It's interesting you're saying that, because I was just thinking this morning about nutrition and how complicated eating has become.
Yeah.
Like, so complicated.
No one can agree either.
Am I plant? Am I carnivore? Am I dairy? Am I wheat? Am I gluten? Can I eat grains? Can I not eat grains? Grains are good for you. No, grains. Like, it's just become
so true,
so complicated. And I remember my dad, and my dad was an older generation. So whilst I look quite young, my dad was, he died at 92, and he was old school. He was the youngest of 15 kids.
Jesus.
15
kids.
Wow. Imagine our partners having 15 children, childbirth.
I don't think that's allowed anymore.
I'm sure it's not allowed. So he was a pommy, 15 kids. He obviously grew up with brothers that were like uncles, they were so much older. Anyway, grew up, during the end of the war there, and just ate simple. Dad ate simple. In fact, on that wall there, you can't see it, but there's a picture of Dad, and it's a framed. It's his butter knife. Like, it's got a timber handle, and it was his knife, right? He would butter. He would eat his steak with it. He would cut his veggies with it. He'd prepare his meals with it. It was the all-purpose little knife, right? He ate simple all his life. Same sort of food. Didn't question whether meat was good or bad, or veggies were good or bad. They just ate simple and lived a long and very, very healthy life till the end. And now we've got this just so complicated.
It just makes you wonder whether, so from a nutritional point of view, biologically, chemistry, your dad's maybe not eating the optimal food, the best food. But from a mindset point of view, it's simple. He eats. It's not a negative experience. He's not creating, cortisol, stress. He just eats. So mind and body are healthy, lives a long life. I reckon you could be eating the best food in the world, gluten-free, all this stuff. But if you're stressed about it, you might as well be poisoning yourself.
100%. And you look at the blue zones, their food is simple. They just,
it's so true.
It's just, and they're not all vegetarians. They're not all vegans. Yep, they eat a heap of plant stuff, but it's just simple. It's just simple food, and it's the same food, time and time again. You're exactly right, Matty. There's no thought about should I eat this or shouldn't. It's just that's just what we eat. And this conversation came up because I have been following different diets and going, oh, I think maybe I need to be a bit more carnivore. Or, oh, geez, no, I need to be more vegan. And
what do you
being pulled around and eating lots of diets. And it actually made me, I ended up getting quite crook. I ended up getting a condition called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And I think part of it was I was just screwing with my guts. And anyway, my mentor, my guide, my wise one, that is my wife, said to me, mate, what do you reckon? What do you think you need to do going forward now that you're kind of getting over this? And I of course went, well, I don't know. What do you reckon? She goes, well, and she tries to be clever. She tries to coach me. It doesn't really work. She goes, well, what did you used to do? Like back in the old days, what did you do? And what did your dad do? And, I said, well, pretty simple. She said, like what? What did you do? I said, well, I'd get up and I'd have a bit of toast and a cup of tea, and then I'd have a bit of porridge a bit later on, and then maybe for lunch I'd have leftovers from last night, and then we'd just have meat and some veg for dinner. I said, well, why don't you just go back to that? Just plain, simple. Don't think it's just plain eating. So that's kind of the journey I'm on now, is just go back to the good old food that I used to eat as a kid and just keep it simple. But of course, why do we complicate things? Because I think we're sold that things need to be more complicated than they really are. What do you reckon, Janesh?
Yeah, I think in terms of complicated, I think ego plays a bit into it, where if you can solve a complicated situation, then your ego comes out, right? And it's saying,
validating, you are a big deal because you solved the big problem.
I get myself into trouble when I oversimplify things, and I get that, you don't understand. There's more to it. And I'm like, well, tell me. And I'll push back. And it's like, I think there's things don't need to be. I think it's that the same as that badge of honor of like busy is like, if you go, I did this super epic proposal, blah, blah, so complicated. And it doesn't matter, doesn't change your end result. Like it can be really simple. I think ego is a big one. Ego is a big one. And people, you might have like a really simple solution to something, but it may not, people go, that won't be it. They think that it's like, we talked about another episode with Joel Cranshaw, we talked about value-based pricing versus time-based pricing, right? For professional services, and go, the plumber might charge you $10,000 and 10 hours of work, right? But another plumber charges you $10,000, same outcome, but comes for 5 minutes and just knows exactly where to hit that pipe. Why does society go,
absolutely,
that shouldn't charge me, that shouldn't be $10,000, that should be less, even though it's the same outcome, because he's just good at what he does, super simple, good at what he does, and society or consumers go, oh no, that should be cheaper. You didn't spend time there.
That's so true.
Value to time and complexity. I'm like, just because someone's good at what they do, they shouldn't be penalized. Just because this person's reading the encyclopedia, but this person is able to explain that encyclopedia in one line, you should pay that guy more, right? Because he's able to digest it.
It's like that story, you know, the Picasso story. Picasso's having lunch in a cafe, and a woman comes up to him and says, "Hey, you're Picasso. Can you draw me a little sketch on this napkin?" And he whips up this beautiful picture in about 35 seconds. And the woman says, "Thanks very much." He says, No. You got to pay me for that. And she's like, "What do you mean? You sketched it in 30 seconds. He said, "Yeah, but it took me 30 years of training to make that for you in 30 seconds. You're paying me for 30 years, not for 30 seconds. You know what I mean?
That's so true. I guess, you know, again, I zip back to the blue zones, and it's pretty simple. Just eat well and love people, create a sense of community, move around a little bit, and that's it. And now we've got this whole variety of experts telling us how to eat, and a variety of experts on how to train. No, you got to do long distance running. No, short distance running. No, you got to do HIIT training. No, you got to lift. Don't run. You know, where it's just move, right? In fact, there was a book.
Consistently.
Yeah.
A little bit every day.
there was a book, and this guy's a run expert. He's a researcher, and I think the book's called. It could be called just Move. I think we should put it in the show notes, Jinesh, if I can think of it. And he's a researcher, and he looked at. Oh, it's called. It's something like the business of exercise, or no, it's called. I've got it. It's called Exercised. It's called Exercised. Nice. So we've taken health and we've created this thing, and he said this whole industry, and at the end of the book he goes, just get out of your chair and move a bit. That's it. It's not more complicated.
Yeah.
He said the industry's made it complicated, and I think somehow in our minds you're right, Matty, we've bought into that we've got to complicate things.
Absolutely. I experienced that when I train people. Someone's like, oh, I want to look great. And I'll whip up a training program for them. I give it to them and they're like, oh, you can see the disappointment. Like they think it's going to be some magical, it's literally, you do these things, 3 sets, 30 minutes, 4 times a week. And in 2 years, I don't know, maybe 6 months, 2 years, a year, you'll look and feel the way you want to feel. There's no shortcut yet. There's no magical formula. It's pretty simple. Time, lifting weights or moving your body.
Man, it's like when you talked about that Eastern way, right? If you think about like old school Asian culture, like I'm just thinking like Japan, like they're diligent with their tea ceremonies, right? And they'll get up and they'll either work on the farm or whatever, but they're moving their body all the time. They're eating simple, Ben, like lots of rice, lots of fish. They're not saying, oh, this rice is making me bloated, or I don't have enough red meat in my diet. I need more iron. Let's go get some iron. Or let's go to the pharmacy and get some iron supplements. They're not, and they're living to like 90s to 100, right? Like, and they're happy.
How much of that is not worrying, just being present and just eating? I mean, this brings me to my charge. Like I'm friggin'
Here we go.
That we live in a culture now of specialists, and we prioritize and we say, we listen to them so much. Where are the generalists? Generally life, like particularly now with the current climate, we're looking at something like health through such a tiny little, very specific area that we forget that there's so many other aspects that make up health. I think that we're in this time of, like you said, health is a great example. Everyone's a specialist. You've got so many different ways to do it that it actually ends up meaning no one does anything because they're overwhelmed with information. The same with diet. We don't know because we've got so much information that we end up just freaking out, anxious, don't know what to do. Same with, it seems with everything. There's a scientist for everything. There's the lung specialist, and none of them can agree on what's healthy. They all have their own specific opinion.
I love that story about specialists. Specialists know more and more about less and less until the ultimate specialist knows everything about nothing. And I think, what, so here's my charge, Matty, which doubles down on your charge, is that we are becoming reductionistic, not holistic. We are becoming reductionistic in our sense of community, not holistic in our community. We are no longer one Australia.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The separation that is now occurring in our country, in our states, in our local communities, and in our families I don't believe has ever been greater. And I've been around for 52 years, and I've never seen so much separation and so much fear that's now driving people to attack or defend their position, and to take a position, to take a position of I am right, you are wrong. This is the truth. What you speak is false. So more than ever, I think we are separating. We are minimalising to no longer see the community. And again, I'm going to zip back to Blue Zones. one of the things that was very clear from Blue Zones research, and for those that maybe don't understand what I mean when I've said Blue Zones, these are communities that live to 100 years of age more than anywhere else in the world. There's 7 in the world. Yes, they eat well. Yeah, they exercise. But one of the most common things between all the 7 communities is community.
Yep.
It's community.
Absolutely.
And they build an environment around them that supports that sense of community. Right now, we have an environment that is pulling communities apart. You know, this whole slogan that is
stay apart to stay together.
It's not stay up. Yeah, stay apart, stay together. Social distancing, maybe physical distancing, but not social distancing.
Yep.
So we are separating. We are fragmenting. We're coming lots of individual cells that we know that if I took all my cells and pulled them apart and put them 1.5 meters apart from each other, I no longer exist. My body exists because my cells work as a community. So, mate, I'm on you that one with that charge.
Mate, and imagine if we did start living that way. Like, I just want a little bit more. Like, Bobby is my best friend in Indonesia, and they have this dialed in community. And it's part of the reason why I want to build a business there, is because they can teach us this community. You know, the elderly in his family look after the kids. They're all part of the same family. You can pass a kid to anybody in that family. There's 100 in his little village. Like a tiny baby, hand it to any one of the young men there, and they know how to look after it because they brought up their brothers and their sisters. So there's this, kids aren't being looked after by someone who's paid. They're being looked after by people who love them, who have the same blood coursing through their veins, who want to look after them, who don't ask for any money for it. You've got the elderly hanging out with the young. You've got the working class going out and working and bringing money back to feed everyone. Like, we need to learn to go back to some of this stuff to really, prioritize community, because we're dying from being lonely. One of the biggest killers is loneliness. Stress and loneliness, and we do it to ourselves. It's mind-blowing.
Do you think, given the current climate where so human connection is needed more than ever right now, right? As humans, we're created to connect. We're not created to live as hermits, right? Even though we're created to connect, right? Do you think that society will go back to that, where it is that connection? I find it hard when you talked about separation, Ben, in local communities, and those people that know me, I like to play in the grey in a lot of things, and but people around me are divided, right? And you just don't know where a conversation could go, where it's like, and I'm not the most politically correct person, right, at all. And it is hard because you're like, I love this person, but you're like, I don't know where your stand is on this, where usually it doesn't really matter, right? You're connecting anyway, and you can have a different opinion, but still connect. Now, this different opinion is dividing. I think this different opinion, this different stance is dividing. And if you don't have a stance, it is, you're like, why not? You're asked, why isn't your stance on that? I'm like,
and you get put in the category of the fence sitter, which is worse than the sheep, which is worse than everyone's got a name for someone who has an opinion or doesn't have an opinion. Fucking over it. To be honest.
Do you think it go back to or do you think we will, current society, do you think it will wake up to the need of human connection? Will that surpass the current thing that's running decisions?
I think if you look at Benny, and let's use him as a metaphor, Benny's diet, what's he going back to? What's his wife encouraging him to go back to where it all started? All of us are born into community, if we're lucky. Sorry, not all of us. Many of us, though, baby born, mum, dad, if you're lucky, and then some siblings. And there's community when there's a new baby. I'm noticing, I don't know if Kat's housemates just had a kid, and everyone wants to be around the kid. There's this community when someone's born, and then it seems to fizzle out. I'm hoping, and I feel like we have to return back to community. I think we have to, because that's where peace, longevity, so many good things are. What do you think, Benny? We heading back there?
But I'd like to think so. What we do see, though, in these in the climates like we see now, is that people create separate communities of like-minded, same belief people, that we find ghettos of thinking, and so we're seeing that now. There'll be a lot of people out there going, "Hey, we've got community. I hang out with people that think like me and that believe like me," and but the gap between these tribes, between these communities, is getting bigger. They're not we're not all parts of a whole anymore. We're like totally separate parts, totally separate organisms. So that would be my concern, is that sometimes in these sort of events, we see people separate and build micro communities that have nothing in common with other communities. We need to find a commonality. And, for the three of us, if I can speak for you guys and tell me if this is not true, but our commonality is that there is no truth. There is just, what works at the time. There is our version of the truth. Mm-hmm. There is a meaning that we put to something, and is it resourceful? Is it good for us, and is it good for the people around us? That there is no right or wrong. And so I wonder whether we could find that a commonality, certainly in Australia at least, that, look after your mates. They might not think the same as you, but here's the commonality, we're Australian.
And that's so powerful. That's the way forward. Like, I know, I'm going to say a word, Janesh, you're probably hair's going to stand on end, but when it comes to the vaccines, if you have people, that's that trigger word. We just lost viewers. Maybe we've got a few more. If you have within families people who are for it and against it, but they still remember we're family, they still have each other's back. If you go into a restaurant and they say, no, sorry, we're not going to serve that person, or they say, well, then we're not coming in either. That's community. That's, regardless of your choice, you have that other person's back. I feel like that's the answer. It's when we segregate within our own communities, it starts to break down. But, Kat's for, I'm against. Kat can have my back. And then that teaches everyone else, because, she's like us. Why is she supporting him? Because it's the right thing to do. It's about humanity. It's about, no one actually knows what's right long term. So let's look after each other. And I feel like if there is that united, regardless of decisions, that could be the answer.
Mate, where's mateship? We're famous for that in Australia. We have memorials, we have imagery. I remember that imagery of that soldier helping that other soldier across, a creek. It's a classic old one. In fact, one of those soldiers was the husband of a patient of mine back in one of my Gippsland practices.
Wow.
He said, "Do you realize that image there is my husband?" It's just incredible. And that imagery of mateship, that's what we need to bring back in Australia, is mateship, is cobber, is that sense of, we stand as one, not always agreeing, and isn't that what, in recent years we've seen more and more has been the narrative of, dare I say, the left, is whether you're Muslim, whether you're black or white, whether you're Christian, we're all Australian, whether you're male or female, we're Australians. It's what happened to that narrative? I mean, we were sprouting that 2-3 years ago. It doesn't matter where you come from, you're Australian.
Yeah, they just move that whole notion of segregation into another paradigm, and people go, no, you can't be racist. Oh no, you can't be sexist. Oh no, you can't be homophobic, but you can be, if you're vaccinated this and if you're not that. You know what I mean? It's just like the segregation moves into a different area. And it's like, is anyone noticing this? Look, yeah, it's not okay here, but it's okay over here. What are you doing? Oh.
So if we were to wrap up, and I'm conscious of wrapping up for time, mate. Janesh, what do you reckon? What are the? It would be nice for us to zip through. What are the maybe 2 or 3 take homes out of this conversation? Do you reckon? What's the?
I think I got 2 that comes to mind is simple. Simple is more. It's not small. It is more. And I encourage listeners to try on simple, right? In whatever version seems fit. Try on simple in something you do, right? Try and see if it works, right? And you might be surprised it might work. That's one, is that simplicity. The second one is probably a big one for me, is that mateship, right? Connection. Like, yeah, where the country's in lockdown across and it is segregated, but are you actually reaching out? Brings to mind when I lived in the States, I probably reached out more, and Australian friends reached out more to me while I lived across the world. Then now we're in the same country, we can't see each other. Same thing, we couldn't see each other then, but there's no reach out. Why? Like, I don't know the reason of that exactly, but I'm like, well, reach out, right? It's now more than ever that people need connection. You might not see them, but connect, right? Like, ask them, are you okay? There was Are You Okay Day last week, right? But why isn't that every day? I don't know. But I think that mateship and that connection needs to be alive, and it can't depend on your views, because it never has, right? Like, you're not going to not like your friend because they go for a different football team, right? So I think simplify your view a little bit with that and go, hey, look, this person is still a good human. I still like their company. But you're not going to defriend them. It's not a social media of life and go, I'm just going to defriend you because you just click that like button on another post, right?
Isn't that what makes life incredible? That you get to live 10 lives. You live vicariously through your friends who have different hopes, dreams, aspirations, beliefs. We come together. We're still mates, but you have completely different views. So when I hang out with you and have a beer, I move into your world. I see things through your perspective. And then I go, well, that's you. And I go back into my world. But it's nice, isn't it? It always used to be really nice to have a network of people who all think differently, who have different opinions. It challenges you to grow and be a better version of yourself. So I agree with you, man. Simple mateship. And I throw in discipline. That Benny brought that up, that the idea of being disciplined creates more simplicity, or being disciplined can create the freedom. It takes discipline as well, as you're saying, to reach out to those friends. You know, maybe you have to put it in your journal, connect with this person today. And if you, by being disciplined, also having a bit of structure, you're more likely to call that person. What do you think, Benny? Would you add anything to the back end of that?
I think you guys have really summed it up nicely. And I think they all integrate. Simple discipline around community. Yeah. I wonder if that was the thing. You know, we could all just do something simple in a disciplined way to build more community, to build more mateship. Who could we call today? Who could our listeners call, you know, when they finish listening to this and they hit the pause or the end at this and they go, you know what, I'm just going to call. I haven't called them for ages. Could be weird because I haven't spoken to them for 6 months and we used to speak regularly. Fuck it, I'm going to call them.
Yeah.
Simple. It's just a phone call. But powerful.
And maybe make note of that resistance. Isn't it true that whenever there's something profound or something meaningful that we're going to do in our life, there's so much resistance beforehand. There's this just narrator in our head. It's like, oh, fuck it. They're going to be probably not going to answer. They're going to think, oh, that's weird. He hasn't spoken to me in ages and now he's calling me. There's always this just chatter of why I shouldn't make that change or do that thing.
That's so true. Yeah. Well done, lads. That was great today.
Yeah,
really
so
great.
Everyone got a little bit of a benefit from our chatter, and till next time. Thanks for listening to another episode of Lifelong Learner. If you like this episode and want to know more and hear other episodes, head over to lifelonglearnerpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter, where you'll be the first to know when new podcast episodes come out. And if you want to say hello, tell us a joke, or ask us a question, send us an email at hello@lifelonglearnerpodcast.com. Thanks again.